What up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So I just got a text from one of my buddies. I don't hear from often, but when I do, it's typically the bell ringing at the top. And you know, I get the text like, "Hey man, do you use any apps to trade stocks?" And I'm like, we're probably in bubble territory now, because you know, where was this text like 4 years ago or 8 years ago? We're like, we've known each other 20 years. Like, where was it 15 years ago? Now it's coming in. So typically, the way that from my understanding of market history, and I like markets. Like, I studied markets in undergrad. Like, I studied finance and economics, and so I'm fascinated by markets. They're really interesting things. They're just really, really fascinating. Typically, when there is no one left on the sidelines, that's when it hits. And I'm not calling for some sort of crash. I'm not calling for some sort of top. That's not my game, really. But what I will say is one of the investing legends I have followed for a long time. I mean, just a wise soul is Jim Rogers. I would love to interview that guy. I mean, he is read his book, Adventure Biker, Adventure Capitalist. Just now starting Market Wizards by Jack Swagger, where he's interviewed in it. This guy, he was George Soros's partner in the 70s, and they killed it. I mean, they crushed it together. And then they split out and they went their own ways, and Jim basically went off to see the world, and Soros went off to become an evil, dark villain that you see in a science fiction, movie. And they never, when he's asked about Soros, he never says anything bad about him, but he's just like, yeah, we didn't talk about politics. We were focused on making money for our clients. And so Jim always says, he's like, invest in what you know and what you're good at. And he uses gardener as an example. He's like, if you're a great gardener, he's like, stick with that. Like, invest in that industry, invest in that market. And he goes, what will happen is over 20 years, and you just stick with your thing that you're really good at, and you just continue to perfect it. He's like, all the people will come out of the woodwork and be like, see, I knew that you were always gonna be the greatest of whatever. And he's like, stick with what you know. And so when my buddy texts and I don't hear from him often, and it's one of these type of things, it's always to me a signal to of like what's going on, because he's an eccentric guy. He's very he succumbs to like FOMO very easily. He doesn't want to miss out. He's very much a millennial. And that's the thing about my generation, is we want to know where we are relative to everyone else in our generation. That's just a thing that I've noticed. It's a thing that the GIs had. They're on that same fourth turning archetype. So, but I think it's really interesting how many people will go chase something they know nothing about for gains that are not really certain and not even that great if they do achieve them. When they won't just stick with what they're really good at, like with what they really know. Like, for example, like when I do buy equities, I attend a conference every year in the summer about these particular equities, and like the CEOs of these companies are there, and like I talk to them, and like I have dinner with them and stuff like that, and like I'm really interested in that space, and so I spend a lot of money, I mean thousands of dollars a year, learning about that space. And I'm not saying that I'm like some sort of market wizard or anything like that. I certainly aspire to become one. Like I certainly want to get really, really good at understanding markets, understanding arbitrage, understanding like really managing my own psychology. When everyone's flipping out, that's the time to be making moves. When everyone's selling, that might be the time to be paying attention, maybe planning on buying. Like crisis investing to me is really interesting. But staying in your core competency and in what you're really, really great at, you can find your returns anywhere if you're sticking with what you're really, really good at. My buddy is one that will bounce from this to that, to this to that. He actually used to work with me, like it was one of our first job. Our first job was together, like we worked together, and then I hired him to work with me on my first landscape company, and I've pretty much been in that industry. I went to school, studied finance. I went to DC, did an internship, and I studied economics. Like I pretty much put my time into the industry to be like, all right, like I've learned what I've learned, and I pretty much stuck with it. He's floated from like all sorts of stuff, marketing, insurance sales, wealth management, you know, just all sorts of stuff. Computer programming, just all that stuff. And he's a great guy. He's a great guy. But when I start getting texts like this, I'm like, oh, let me check. Oh, Bitcoin's at an all-time high today. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, the market's following Bitcoin. Risk on. And oh, the 10-year yield is dropping, which is just a sign of like cash moving from the bond market into the equity market. And it's just fascinating to me, the psychology of it, because I have to just not pay attention when stuff like this, because I succumb to FOMO too. I'm like, oh man, do I, and I'm just like, no, I don't. I like headlines where, like, one of my best buys, one of my best, like, very chill equity buys was headline: Exxon booted from the Dow or the S&P, whatever one it was in. It was like kicked out of the index, and I was like, all right, this is probably the cheapest it's gonna ever be. And I bought it at like 1994 prices or something like that in like 2020, and it's done well. I think I bought it at like $25. It's gone to like $100. It's paid me a 10% dividend since, it's been paying me a $3 or $4 dividend since then. So like on that 25, I've already recouped it. When I hit 100, I sold like my initial position, so like it's free to me now, and it just keeps making dividends like every quarter or every 6 months or whatever. Like they just keep dropping dividends in there, and it's like very boring and whatever. And like at that time, everyone was like, well, that we're not going to be using gas by 2030, right? And it's like, okay, that's why Exxon get kicked out of the index, man, because, we're done with that. And it's like, well, I mean, my truck still runs on it, so, it's pretty cheap. Like, I need it just for my truck, so I guess that, so I don't know, these things just, they really, really fascinate me, especially when we're in like a euphoria, because I just feel like we're getting close to this euphoria. Because when I think about guys in their position, some of my buddies, we're younger guys, so we're getting established. Like we're building our businesses, we're building our households, we're building up our savings, we're building our lives, building our networks, all these things. And I look at like what's important to these guys, some of them, it's chasing things that don't matter, which is, like, hey man, there's no shipping coming in out of the Red Sea for like US flag ships. That's going to be inflationary as hell, like in the next 4 to 6 months. Like, you haven't, anything that comes from that area, do you make sure you buy it now? And like, nope, that's not a thought right now. It's not a thought. Like, what is the thought is like chasing Bitcoin, which I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin, big fan. Anything that takes the dollar out, I'm a big fan. But man, it just feels to me that we're in this, like the fog of war. Like, I mean, like it's clear to me that there's a war on like humankind, and there's just a certain group of people that just do not want to see a prosperous planet. Like they just hell or high water, they're gonna do whatever they can to just make sure that doesn't happen. And to not be set up in a way right now where it's like, if they turn the lights off, literally, how much do you care? Like, I care. It's very, like I love grid, like on-grid electricity. It's very cheap. It's very convenient. But like, if it just went off and didn't come on for like the next 2 years, not a lot of my life is going to change. Like, I mean, a few of my buddies, not a damn thing's going to change in their life. Like, they're all solared up. My buddy's I went to his house yesterday. He's freaking welding in his garage with solar panels on top of his barn structure, running his welder with his Tesla plugged into it with his diesel truck next to it. And I'm like, bro, you're out. Like, you're completely independent, man. And he's like, yeah, feels good. Feels good. He's on he's got 5 acres. It's all planted. He's got chickens and all that stuff. And he's got pigs, the whole deal. And it's just like, dude, you're set. He hasn't reached out to me about, hey man, what app are you using to buy stock? No, he hasn't, not at all. Like, he's talking to me about welding aluminum chicken tractors because they won't rot and they'll be easier to move and more mobile. And he's just thinking through like, hey, this would be cool. We wouldn't have to buy chicken anymore. We'll just make all of our own chicken. I'm like, I love that idea. But anyway, my message here is like, in an environment of FOMO, for myself, I gotta say this out loud because I'm an out loud thinker. I gotta hear it out loud and just be like, yeah, it's good. I talk to myself all the time. But like, don't worry about it. Don't worry, but this is a long game. And in investing, and it just in markets in general, it's a no called strike game. There's no strikes being called here. So you miss an opportunity. Oh man, I missed Bitcoin at 7,000. Oh, I missed Bitcoin at, or I missed buying Exxon, or I missed. There's no strikes, man. There's no strikes. There's lots of things I wish I bought. I wish I bought a crap ton of real estate 4 years ago. You know, like way more than I did. I wish I didn't even buy paid for real estate. I wish I leveraged the crap out of it and just sold half of it right now and paid it off with my freaking doubles and triples. And more than that, because real estate's fun. You get to put down 10%, 20%, and then it doubles. And so did you double your money, or did you just 5x your money? You know, like there's lots of things like that. But investing is a no called strike game. The main thing is don't get carried out. Like that's the game. Like the mistakes I've made that have cost me a lot and cost me years. I mean, hopefully I've gained wisdom from it. You know, wisdom is worth more than silver and gold. So Solomon says. That's Proverbs 8. So he says, and I'm going with that. That sounds about right. The guy had all the silver and gold in the world. I mean, the guy was the wealthiest guy to ever live. And he's saying wisdom is more important. But don't get carried out. That's the game. Like when I've had to reset, when I've had like businesses that have failed, and I've had everything riding on them, and then it just doesn't work out because the idea is not that good, the team falls apart, whatever. It's like, man, those are harder to recover from than the awesome wins. Like you get awesome wins, and it doesn't change your life a whole lot, and because you use them to make more wins. I mean, when you're really like Dogecoin, perfect example. I think I opened this video with that. Like, you know, my buddy hit me up. Hey man, you know Elon's going on SNL, and you should buy some Dogecoin. I was like, bro, I've been promoting Dogecoin since it was like before 1 penny, man. But like, you know what I did at that moment? I sold it. It's 69 cents. I sold it. Because I was like, dude, I'm bullish Dogecoin long term. There's an economist, Milton Friedman. Like, I'm a big fan of Dogecoin because it's exactly his thesis. People are like, oh, it's a joke coin. No, it's a counter elite that has his own currency, essentially. There's a counter elite named Elon Musk, and if he wants to like go to war with the Federal Reserve when he's done with like the current mainstream media, if he decides to go to war, he's got his own damn currency, and it runs exactly how Milton Friedman's papers all said a fiat currency should run. And everyone's like, oh, it's a joke coin. It's like, I don't know. And I think it's worth a lot more than 69 cents personally. I think it's gonna go higher than that. But like when my buddy's like, hey man, you should buy it because it's gonna go up. It's like, where have you been? It's gone up 69 times since like March, you know, since like at that time, like since like 4 months ago, bro. You know, it's doubled and doubled and doubled. But now you think because Elon's going on SNL and he's representative of like, you know, the King Doge guy, that all of a sudden you know something the market doesn't know. You know, it's irrational. It's really bizarre. It's really irrational. Like people, like my mom does this, and everybody does this. We're all human. But like my mom wants to buy an entire Bitcoin at $17,000 17,000 Bitcoin, like $17,000 per one Bitcoin. Like that was the price of Bitcoin at the time. I tell my family on, I think it was 21 or 2020, Thanksgiving, there was this little dip, and I excused myself and I said, I've got to go make a purchase. Like I've been waiting for this, been waiting for 17, didn't think it was going to come back, need to buy it. And everyone's like, oh, that's crazy. Like you're an idiot, you know? And that was my number because it had spiked there at one point in time. It had, you know, in the first bubble of Bitcoin, it hit 17 and then crashes down to like 3,000 or something like that. But it didn't crash down to 3,000 because like the first time I ever saw Bitcoin, it was $3. So it's still 1,000x like from where it was originally. And it went to 17 and then it went down to 3 and people are like, it's over. And it's like, you know, and then it establishes this new floor. But here's my thing. My mom had no interest in Bitcoin at 17,000, thought I was an idiot. At 50,000, she's calling because she wants to buy an entire Bitcoin and wants to know how to do it. And I'm like, it's 3 times less attractive than it was a year ago at 17. But now you want it. Like there's actually 300% more reason to not buy it. But it's the opposite now. Now you want to buy it even more than you did before. She didn't end up buying it. It went down to 17,000. I called them and said, this is a great price. And, oh, my accountant says that's a scam. Okay. So I called her today. And I said, new all-time high. Now's the fun part. You get to sell a third of that Bitcoin, get your money back, and the rest of it's free. If you'd like to double your money, you can sell half, and the rest of it's free. She's like, I didn't buy any. I was like, yeah, that's the game. And I love that game because it's markets and it's psychology, and people are not rational. And so don't succumb to FOMO. Like, we're in dangerous times. We're in times where, like, you definitely want to get to a spot where if the electricity wasn't there, you don't care. So, like, if you don't have a generator, maybe do that before you're chasing something that you don't know anything about, or you're chasing or buying something at all-time highs. And make sure you got that. Maybe a backup one or two, and like a bunch of fuel for it, and those things. And then when you have those things established, then you can start to, invest in what you know. But that's not the way market psychology goes. And I just think it's so funny because this is why the very small group of people just kill it, and then everybody else is a victim. And I'm really, really working and studying because I want to be in that group of people that just constantly kills it. I just want to constantly kill it. But part of it comes from, like, when I've got my buddies that are leading indicators to me, and they're hitting me up. Hey man, how do I buy stocks with an app? I'm like, I'm gonna go home tonight and this weekend, and I'm gonna look at what I'm gonna sell. I don't know what I'm gonna sell. I'm just gonna sell something because that's what I write this down in a journal. Like, when this individual calls, that's a sell signal. So I need to look at, like, what's done well and sell something on Monday, because that's just how I play it. So hope you guys got something out of that. I'll see you on the next one. Stay.